we have a surprise emergency episode today because the Buffalo Bills have made a big move. The Bills are trading for wide receiver DJ Moore, according to Ian Rappaport and Diana Rossini. This is a move that immediately changes the conversation around the Buffalo Bills offense and what Brandon Beane is trying to build around Josh Allen next season. So in this episode, we're going to break down the trade, DJ Moore as a player, the contract situation, and why I think this is actually a move that makes a lot of sense. I am your host, Devin Long, and this is the 22nd episode of the Down South Bills podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And with that being said, let's get into the trade. So according to reports, the Bills are sending a 2026 second round pick to acquire DJ Moore, and they're also getting a fifth round pick back in 2026 in the deal. So this is not the greatest value on paper because of DJ Moore's numbers dropping off a little bit. But I think because the Bills were ultimately able to keep their first round pick and get a wide receiver 1B type guy, I think this is a deal that you have to do, especially with the familiarity with Joe Brady. And, they could use the fifth round pick to move around the draft board. They could use that extra fifth round pick to say, hey, move up in the third round, move from the third to the second. Whatever they may do, they could use that fifth round pick. So don't just, dismiss that as something like, hey, just we traded DJ Moore for a second round pick. Ultimately, still kind of have that fifth round pick as something that holds a little bit of value. Not a ton, but hey, Christian Benford was picked in the sixth round, so let's not just sneeze at those picks because it ultimately depends on how you draft and who you draft. But as far as the contract situation with DJ Moore, people are going to look at the contract and say, hey, the Bears traded you a terrible contract. One of my good friends just said it to me not too long ago. It's a 4-year deal, $98 million. But the key here to me is the guarantees. It is $24.5 million every single year of that contract. But according to Spotrac, the cap hit for this year could drop to $6.75 million, which could roughly free up $17.7 million in cap space. And ultimately, only this year and $15 million next year is guaranteed on DJ Moore's contract. So for the Buffalo Bills, it could ultimately just be a 2-year commitment, which I think is good for DJ Moore. He's 28 years old, turning 29 in April. So I think having him for 2 years, and then maybe we could take a third year as far as a void year and have it a little bit cheaper to get the cap hits down for the next 2 years if he plays good. But ultimately, if he doesn't necessarily work out, we could, say, hey, we had him for 2 years, we did that, and then we ultimately moved on. But I think this is a deal that the Buffalo Bills made, and I don't think anyone should feel, oh my gosh, we traded for DJ Moore, this is horrible, the world's going to end. I don't think we should have anyone like that, but I don't think we should ultimately have people saying, hey, we're going to win the Super Bowl either. And I'm going to continue to get into that as the podcast progresses. But DJ Moore as a player, DJ Moore is 28 years old. He turns 29 in April. He's 6 feet, 213 pounds, and came out of Maryland University. But the thing I love most about DJ Moore is the durability. He hasn't missed a game in the last 5 seasons, and I think that matters. I know you guys are probably Buffalo Bills fans as well as I am. And having these injuries that we've had in the previous years, this has just been so annoying. This previous year, we had Josh Palmer out a ton of games. Curtis Samuel, throughout his tenure in Buffalo, has missed a ton of games. And I mean, it's just terribly annoying. And I'm just glad to see that we get a player in that has been durable. Now, I don't want to jinx him. He could come in and get hurt. I don't want to jinx that. But I'm saying so far up to this point, he has been durable. And I'm glad that we traded for a guy who, his one of his biggest things is durability. And then as far as his career production, if you go throughout his career, his numbers have been remarkably consistent to me. His best season came in 2023 with the Bears, where he had 96 catches, 1,364 yards, 8 touchdowns. And then in 2024, he had 98 catches, 966 yards, 6 touchdowns. So far in 2025, he did have a little bit of a drop-off, 50 catches, 682 yards, and 6 touchdowns. But I think this was more so due to inconsistent quarterback play, and I also think it was just, he had more weapons around him. They had Adunze, who was blossoming a little bit. They had Luther Burden. So I think that's just more so about the quarterback play, and the people around him. I know some people are going to say, Caleb played amazing. What are you talking about? But DJ Moore, if you look at his his catchable ball radius, it was very low last year. I think it was something 89th out of 115 qualifying receivers, his catchable target rate. So although Caleb was playing pretty good last year for stretches, I don't think that necessarily tells the whole story because DJ Moore, I mean, he's been producing with great quarterback play. I think it's just, Ben Johnson is a smart guy, and I think that having multiple people around DJ Moore, I think he wanted to spread the ball out more so to help Caleb versus to hurt DJ Moore in a sense because DJ Moore was still getting a little bit of targets, but some of those targets were off target as we can see by the numbers. So take with that as you may. DJ Moore has played with terrible quarterbacks in Carolina, played with terrible quarterback play in Chicago a little bit, so he's been able to overcome that. So that again gives me a little bit of just optimism as far as the move is concerned. But as far as skill set fit for the Bills, the other thing I really like is just the role he could play with the Bills. I think DJ Moore is highly effective against man coverage. Some people may say he isn't the best route runner, and I don't think he's Devontae Adams or anything of that nature. But in 2022, he had a 71.2 success rate versus man coverage, according to Reception Perception. And in 2023, he ranked among the league leaders with a .92 first down per reception rate against man coverage. And I think that's the kind of receiver that the Bills need at that X position. We've tried Keon Coleman, we tried Josh Palmer, and he got hurt. But I think having DJ Moore, having Josh Palmer in the mix, having Khalil Shakir, and having Dalton Kincaid, now it's starting to look a little bit more like we're a complete team here. We have DJ Moore, like you know what I'm saying? Like it just evens out the room a little bit more versus having only inside weapons. We now have someone on the outside who can kind of even out our skill positions. I know some people are going to say DJ Moore isn't a wide receiver one. I don't think DJ Moore is this high end wide receiver one. I'm not telling you that, but I do think he's a 1B. I think he's a 2A. I think he's that type of receiver who, and especially, I think it just matters about the fit. I think Khalil Shakir can be our slot or our Z, but I think we ultimately needed a X to complete our offense. Our offense was just simply incomplete. And I think this more than anything just creates balance within the offense, and it's a balance that the Bills have needed for quite some time. And I just think that pretty much addresses the criticism. I know there's going to be criticism every time a team makes a big move like this. There's going to be people who are too far right and too far left. I get that 100%. I think you should be optimism and glad that Brandon Beane was overall willing to make this move. And I think you could also be cautious a little bit about his age and about, various things, but I also don't think you should ultimately hate the move, and I also don't think you should ultimately be like, oh my gosh, we're winning the Super Bowl. I'm not telling you any of those things because this team is complete. We do still have holes at safety. We have holes at center. Connor McGovern says the Bills haven't talked to him. He thinks he's leaving. He's out of Buffalo. David Edwards probably going to be too high for the Bills to resign. So we do have holes at offensive guard, at center. We have holes at safety. We have holes at edge rusher. We have holes at linebacker. So we do ultimately have other things that we need to address. But I think that completing the wide receiver room, the skill positions on offense, and I do still think we should target a wide receiver in the third round of the playoffs, maybe even the first round, depending on who's there. But I think this is a great start. And I think this just, as I said, gives us balance. And so overall take is just that. I think it gives us balance, and I'm glad to see that Bean is taking these swings. I don't know if he has another swing in him, guys. This is a pretty big swing as far as the money. I know they're gonna have to move some money around and make it work, but I think now it's gonna be filling in the blanks as far as those holes that I discussed in free agency, and maybe Cedric Van Pran Granger, Alec Anderson steps into one of those starting roles. But I think ultimately the Bills begin now to target free agency, get a little bit of cost-effective names in those positions that I mentioned, and then hopefully tackle the draft with one starter position open. Hopefully no starter positions open, then we can just draft, best player available within the positions that I discussed and kind of double dip at those. But, hopefully we can at least go into the draft with one, maybe two starter roles open and then fill those within the draft. But glad to have DJ Moore on the team. I hope I taught you a little bit more about DJ Moore and his fit with the Buffalo Bills today. If you're too far left and you hate it, I hope I made you like it a little bit more. And if you think we're going to the Super Bowl just because of DJ Moore, I hope you take a step back and see, hey, we do still have a few more holes to address, although this is very exciting. But for now, that's it for the podcast, episode 22. I am your host, Devin Long, and thanks again if you made it to the end of the podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, and leave your comments below on how you feel about DJ Moore. Thanks, and go Bills.